Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. This is Stuart Cohen. I'm the president of IGI Cyber Labs. Thanks so much for joining us today. As always, feel free to ask any questions you have, or feel free to put them in the chat or question box, and we'll make sure we get to them. Also, while we're waiting for a few minutes for some other folks to log in, feel free to let anybody else know that the recording will be available on our YouTube channel as well. So with that, we're just going to wait for 30 seconds or so, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So as always, this is our chance to show you Nodeware and for you to be able to ask the questions you want to have. We've had a lot of people use this in the past, both managed service providers and potential partners of ours have used this session to take a look at Nodeware, understand how Nodeware could be used. We've also had a number of small and mid-sized businesses look at Nodeware on these sessions to see how they could take advantage of it, how they could start to build out their either their risk management solution or how to potentially just get started, right? Learn a little bit about what products you might have that are vulnerable with the frequency of attacks that are going on, as well as with the increased compliance and regulatory issues that are coming at businesses pretty fast and furiously lately with all the different activities that are going on. With that, as a reminder, feel free to ask any questions in the chat box, in the question box. We got a few things that got submitted over LinkedIn. I will get to those as well. Let's move on to the next page. One of the things that has been of interest, both from a compliance and regulatory standpoint, is the work that the FTC rolled out earlier this year, specifically regarding the FTC Safeguard that now auto dealerships, RV dealerships, boat dealerships have to put in place for the first time. It is a set of responsibilities and requirements that the dealerships need to go through. We are fortunate enough to have one of the folks from Meriplex, Molly Moore, will be on with us, and Jim Lawrence will be on from SDP Consulting and Compliance, talking about what's required, what do the dealerships have to do. Some dealerships are implementing it on their own with the help of organizations like SDP and Mosaic and Comply Auto and others, and some are using and requiring or needing an MSP to provide them the kind of materials they're looking for. So we'll have this session coming up on the 3rd. Feel free to attend that session, and we look forward to hearing all the topics on that. If we can go to the next slide. So before we get started, just a couple of things about Nodeware. Nodeware was built about 5-6 years ago as part of a build versus buy scenario. IGI Cybersecurity Services had been in the consulting services for quite some time. They were using some competitive products as part of their fractional CIO, fractional CISO, and vCISO consulting activities, penetration test and the like. But they found they needed something that could provide scanning during normal business hours without any network degradation, could provide immediate alerts. And in a scenario there, the organization decided to build the product. About 1.5 years ago, we separated the product into IGI Cyber Labs, and we now have the product available through our distribution channels and through our direct relationships bundled with our services organizations and the services products for customers that need to acquire the product that way. We'll spend a couple of minutes today talking about and showing you a demonstration of the product, some of the features and functions, some of the things that separate it from everybody else in the marketplace, as well as give you some examples of how MSPs can use it as they transition their clients from IT desktop and IT outsourcing to begin to get them on the path to cyber hygiene and to cybersecurity solutions, all the way to a holistic risk management approach with a variety of different solutions that are out there today. And we can talk about our API and some of the things we have to offer. As always, put any questions you have in the question box, in the chat box. And with that, I will turn it over to Mark Klein, who's our Director of Customer Support, to give a quick demonstration of the product.
Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. So what we want to do, I'll just hit some high-level 10,000-foot view of Nodeware. I'll dive a little deeper into the result data set that should make sense to everyone and hopefully show you how identification on the Nodeware side and the remediation on your side, how that can quickly be done very efficiently. Here's our landing page. On this, I have a score of an 853. It's covering 3 customers that I have set up in my multi-tenant dashboard, of which all 3, I have 98 total assets. 98 of those are the local area network assets. 7 of them are WAN-facing or public-facing IP addresses or domain names. Very high level, some news, some overall vulnerabilities and protected assets. Really, the meat and potatoes is when you dive into the customers. Here's the first visual of the multi-tenancy. Each one of these customer cards is a different customer. They are 100% siloed. They cannot see one another, and therefore they report individually. Diving into the Aperture customer, now I'm looking at an individual customer and their assets that Nodeware was able to discover. They have a score, overall score of 832. There's 15 assets currently online. You can tell online versus offline down here by the green eye is online. Red eye would mean that it is offline. 19 assets have been scanned total, and we have 19 monitored assets. So if I want to dive in, we sort by lowest to highest, 0 being poor, that's a bad score. The highest you could get is a 999. Anything greater than that is you basically would have to unplug it from the World Wide Web. So if we dive into this first device that scores a 0, you can see this one is 766 vulnerabilities found. So Windows 2019 server standard. Here's the host name. This one is briefly in just a few moments. But if I wanted to dive into some vulnerabilities on this device, I can go ahead and open it up. And I'm clicking down to drive to a specific CVE, which can be seen here. CVE 2021-34458. It's a Windows kernel remote execution code. Here's a description that Nodeware is pulled from the National Vulnerability Database. We have multiple sources. I think its total number is 12 different sources that we pull from and process that data into a data set that can be used by Nodeware. And then it shows the test results. How do you know that Nodeware found this vulnerability? So you can see that it identified the server correctly and shows that it's installed. And down here, it's showing that this kernel exe is less than this version right there. So that's the key. That is what made this pop, this CVE pop from the Nodeware perspective. It shows the full path to that file. So very quickly, you can see what file on my file system on this machine has caused me to have this vulnerability. So there's a number of ways to remediate this, right? You could go to this path. You could delete that file. File gone, rescan it, vulnerability gone. However, that's really not the neatest way because you could break all kinds of applications that require that executable. So you can now click on the Microsoft Services and Advisories down under the Solutions section. This is going to take you right to that CVE on the Microsoft site, where you can scroll down just a little bit, and here's my downloads that I would want to use. So I can download the security update for that vulnerability, run it locally on that machine, or push it out via distribution management, and vulnerability has been remediated. We take a look at some other ones. So that was specifically around a specific exe file that was vulnerable. So let me think, like this netlog on one, I believe, shows a good example. Yes, it does. So very similar. Okay, it's another CVE, netlog on evaluation and privilege vulnerability, CVE 2020-1472. The description of the vulnerability, again, pulled from one of our sources, and then the test results of how did we get this to pop. So we identify the system again, we see it's installed, and then we see that this KB or patch or a superseding KB is not been installed on the system. Pretty straightforward to fix this one. You need to install a specific Windows patch in order to get that to be remediated. Again, rinse and repeat. Follow out to the Microsoft site in this example. Scroll down to the download section. And here I can either download the monthly roll-up, which contains that patch, or I can down just that specific patch and install it. We leave that up to you as the end user as to what you would want to do for your customers. So obviously, I just showed you a couple Windows examples. That's not all that Nodeware detects. Nodeware will detect anything on your network. As you can see here, we have Ubuntu boxes. We have, here's an external scan that was run, Cisco Meraki, on and on. This will pick up anything that is on the network that's scheduled to be scanned, from Roku TVs to thermostats to doorbells, any of the Internet of Things. Anything with an IP address is the simple way to think about it, will be picked up, identified, fingerprinted, and vulnerability scanned. Here's our tagging methodology over here. And what I can show here is if I wanted to show only my New York City offices, very quickly I can segment my network by clicking that tag. Bam, here's all my devices in my New York City office. If I wanted to select them all up in the top left, I now have additional features. I can go ahead and run any one of our reports on just those devices. I can go ahead and additionally tag those devices if I wanted to. So we'll clear that out. Let's dive into this Ubuntu box. If I click on this Apache, here's an Apache web server, HTTP server. You can see the description again. Ubuntu displays slightly different, but here's the solution. Run sudo app update, sudo app upgrade, and it will automatically provide that protection and remove that vulnerability from the Ubuntu system. So again, those are rinse and repeat steps for remediation. And as I work through my list, and they get rescanned, Nodeware does three things. It will inventory, pull its status, IP, MAC address. Next thing is fingerprint, pull the host name, operating system. Based off of that, it will apply some auto tags. So for like this Ubuntu, we know it's a server and we know it's Ubuntu. So those automatically get tagged. These additional ones were generated by the MSPs for the account. Nodeware can be deployed in two fashions. Agents, which an agent, think of a one-to-one relationship. I'm on a laptop that is supplied by my organization. I have an agent running on it. I am working from my home location today, but the agent is still running and it is still protecting, reporting back to the corporate office on the status of my laptop. It's not concerned about my personal laptop or desktop or my Roku TVs or anything on my home network. It's only focused on the asset where it is installed on. The second way to do that is a one-to-many relationship where you deploy a sensor. We have multiple flavors of sensors. The easy one to really get up and running is install a Windows sensor on a machine dedicated to be on, hopefully 24/7, 365. it's going to look at everything on the network. So it would pick up all of my home devices if I had it installed here. So this would be a one-to-many relationship. It will sweep the entire subnet or subnets, pull back all of the active live IP addresses, and begin to scan them. We offer the Windows, as I mentioned, and then we also have two virtualization appliances, both based off of the OVA open virtualization format, Hyper-V and VMware. And then fourthly, I guess it would be we do have a hardware platform. We sell very few of these. There is a associated cost with it. We maybe sell 1 to 2 of those a year. Those are for some oddball configurations where they may be a remote office somewhere and they just want to buy something simple and not have to worry about scanning across the wire. So we do have the capabilities of deploying multiple ways, multiple configurations to pretty much handle any modern day network that's out there. The ideal situation would be deploy agents where you can deploy agents, then deploy a sensor to pick up all the ancillary devices, your network gear, your IoT devices, your printers, fax machines, so on and so forth. Now you have full coverage, 100% across your network. Moving down here to the subscription tab, very quickly, just a breakdown of my customers, their assets, a different view of the same data. Again, very similar to what we saw on the homepage, 91 assets, 7 of them are external facing, 98 of them total. This is a 2,000 asset subscription, and I have 1,902 assets remaining to be able to deploy those to additional customers moving forward. Our reporting feature, we have a number of reports. I can generate a report, let's say for Aperture, that same customer. Let's say I want to do an executive detail report. I can run this. You can see up top, the report has been generated and requested and generated. While that is finishing generation, well, actually it's done right now. I can schedule reports. So I can say on demand, which is on demand, weekly or monthly. I can select the day of the week, the type of reports that I want to have run, and which customers I want to run them for. I can do them for all, or I can do them for an individual customer, or just a few select customers. When I save that on that cadence, weekly, Monday, these 2 reports will be generated for those 2 customers. Let's take a look at the executive summary report. All reports are encrypted and secured. Well, this one doesn't have a lot of, although I think I ran the external report. I'm sorry, let me grab another report. Executive summary report, there we go. Sorry about that, that was my bad. So here we have Aperture Science. We show the top 10 vulnerabilities. We show the most common vulnerabilities and the number of hosts that are affected by those. We then provide a vulnerability profile, critical, high, medium, low, respectively, and the number of assets that are affected by those. Nice thing about the executive summary, this would be for the owners of the company, C-suite, so on and so forth, but it does talk about what does continuous vulnerability management provide me. Well, it helps with HIPAA, PCI, GDPR, so on and so forth, the confidentiality behind it, the availability and integrity. But real quick with this report, you can hand them off and in a high level view, they can see what their network looks like without getting muddled into the technical jargon that happens. Another quick example is just, let's say that the top 25 vulnerability report. Very similar, white labeled, you can slap your cover page on it, call it your own. Here are the top 25 vulnerabilities for this customer. And then it dives into the nitty gritty. Basically the same data that you saw in the dashboard, the live view of the dashboard, is the same data that's represented here in the report. So this report can be handed off to a commit. Let's say one of your customers has their own IT staff. You can hand them this report. They know what they have to work on. Lastly,
before we move on, we did get a question about the reports. How long does it take once you install Nodeware to be able to run the executive report?
So once you have your first sensor or agent deployed, within a matter of 15 minutes, you will start to have the full scans, which is the inventory, fingerprint, and vulnerability scan data, at which time a report can be run. If you have a larger network, maybe multiple subnets, I would allow a couple hours for Nodeware to do its thing and then go ahead and generate that report. But certainly within the first 24 hours, all of the data should be present and available to run.
So all of the reports that you showed can be available within the first 12 to 24 hours?
Absolutely. Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
So lastly, if you wanted to build your team member, whether it's your technical team with your organization or the technical team with a customer, we allow that. Again, part of the multi-tenancy, multiple customers, multiple users with multiple access rights. So all we need is a first name, a last name, and an email address, the type of rights that you would want to provide them. Analyst would be read only. They can only look. They can't make any modifications or changes. Technician, they can make changes. Administrative, self-explanatory, full rights to the system. Let's say I wanted to create Stuart as one of my technicians, and I only want to grant him access to the Dunder Mifflin customer. That's how I would do it. I would hit invite. Stuart would receive an email to the email address that I provided up above, stating, Mark wants you to join the Nodeware team. Please follow this link to create your account. He follows that link, creates a username, password, does his multi-factor authentication. Now, when he logs in, when Stuart would log in and go to customers, he would only see this Dunder Mifflin card. He would not see Aperture or Pawnee Parks. He would only be able to interact with the Dunder Mifflin customer. So in a nutshell, that is Nodeware.
Mark, if you wouldn't mind going back to the vulnerabilities, I just wanted to make a comment about the deep scan capability.
Sure. So it's, I guess we'll go to this agent. And pick any one of them. Okay.
So just for everybody on today's session, the information that's in the white box below gives you the opportunity to know exactly what you need to do to solve this vulnerability. We've had some of our partners tell us that they average about 15 minutes per day researching vulnerabilities by their systems administrators or by their cyber technicians. So, that's probably a, 2.5 hours a day for an average with 10 vulnerabilities, 12 and a half hours a week, probably in the, $40,000 to $80,000 a year in savings, productivity with providing this information available underneath the red vulnerability scan that you see from Nodeware. So the combination of getting this information combined by the fact that you get an immediate alert when a new vulnerability is identified when you're doing scans during normal business hours allows you to stay on top of any of the bad guys, any of the new vulnerabilities, or a new device that might show up, either on your corporate network or if you're working from home, potentially on your home Wi-Fi. If somebody hacks into your home Wi-Fi, potentially could get to your corporate device and then get to your critical data. So it's a great opportunity. It's one of the ways that our partners are really taking advantage of Nodeware to provide 24-hour, 7 by 24-hour support for their clients. So, Mark, thanks so much for showing that.
You're welcome. I will turn this back over.
So we got a couple of questions. We got a question specifically about how can you acquire Nodeware? Nodeware is available on an annual subscription basis, either paid up front or you can pay it on a monthly basis as you go, although it's still an annual subscription, sold through our distribution partners. So primarily available through Senix and through Ingram Micro, but it's also available through our reseller partners and through folks like the Telarus network as well. So we have a number of different ways that you can acquire it. We got another question about assessments. We partner with Security Studio. Security Studio has their S2 assessments. They come in 3 different flavors on a depth and complexity standpoint. The nice part about it is with our API, the output of Nodeware is immediately dropped into the questionnaire that Security Studio provides. That allows you to get an integrated, holistic risk management solution for your organization and a very quick snapshot of how that works. A couple of other things. We got a question about Gradient. We have a partnership with Gradient, so if you're a Gradient user, you can take the output of Nodeware, you can immediately drop it into their billing solution, and with that, you have the ability to bill your customers based on the vulnerabilities, based on the output from Nodeware. Same is true as you look at cysurance and cyber insurance. If you're an MSP providing cyber liability, or you're an organization that needs cyber insurance, the integration of the output of Nodeware with the assessment from Security Studio and the questionnaire from cysurance allows you to get a proposal for cyber insurance, or potentially, something to compete with a renewal that you might have in place. Mark, we did get a question about sensors and the price of sensors and the price of agents, and how does that fit in the Nodeware offering?
Sure. So from our perspective, the Nodeware sensor and agent, it doesn't matter what way you go, they are 100% free of charge. As many as you need to cover your networks, and customers. To Stuart's point,
go ahead.
We sell Nodeware in blocks of 50 assets. So if you think of an asset is an IP address. So we sell them in blocks of 50 assets, and you can deploy those. If you have a smaller customer, let's say they only have 15 devices, you don't have to buy a block of 50 for every customer. You can buy one block of 50 and allocate 15 assets to customer A, 20 assets to customer B, 5 assets to customer C, all within that first 50 block that you own.
Thanks, Mark. So we have one more question that's come in over the chat box. I will get to that question in a second. If you don't have any other questions, we'll probably wrap up today's session a little early. We will do this next month as well. We do these once a month. We have one, the one next month is coming up with Carbon Helix. Carbon Helix is an IBM QRadar distributor and provider of their solution, and Nodeware is integrated into QRadar. So you can use Nodeware for your normal business hour continuous monitoring and scanning, and integrate it into the QRadar solution. So the question we got specifically today is normal business hour. Why did you decide to do that? The answer is, traditionally the competitors that were in the vulnerability management space, they designed their products to run, Sunday nights to take a snapshot of the network, or to run on the weekends, monthly or quarterly scans. Those were kind of the industry norm a few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago. That has all changed, as I mentioned, with the frequency of cyber attacks, as well as with the opportunity to now meet certain compliance and regulatory requirements. It is much more necessary for continuous monitoring for normal business hours, especially with the remote hybrid workforce that have taken place post-pandemic. The ability to understand who's on your network, what might be a vulnerability to watch, as well as with all the people working from home. While we're not in the home security business, there are a lot of people that put sensors on those corporate devices while working at home. So not only can the device be monitored, but also the home Wi-Fi, just to make sure, especially in an urban environment, nobody's hacking into your Wi-Fi and going from there. Mark, we did get a question that just came in about can you exclude devices so that you're not charged for things that you have no desire to watch?
Yes. So if you go the agent route, that's very simple. You don't put the agent on that device. If you're using a sensor, again, a one-to-many device that sweeps your network, you can assign the scan range to exclude the IP address, or you can, now that would save you from using an asset from scanning a device that you may not be concerned about or whatever the case may be. Or you can actually pause vulnerability scanning on an asset as well. However, that would still utilize an asset because Nodeware will still inventory and fingerprint it. If it's a device that you just do not want to have scanned or use up an asset, you would just exclude that from the scan range, and Nodeware will skip right over it and will be none the wiser.
So I hope that answers your question. You know, it reminds me of, you know, one of our clients. We have a university that ironically chose to only scan the cameras, the doorbells, and the printers on campus, not to scan any of their laptops, desktops, or servers, because they were concerned about the IoT devices that are cameras, that are printers, and that are doorbells. They were worried about the vulnerabilities coming in that way. And it's a great example of how they decided to segment the university into different areas, and you have the ability to do that. So they could pick and choose the devices on campus that they wanted to use and how they wanted to use it. So with that, that's the end of the questions that have been submitted both on LinkedIn and over today's session. As always, if you want to go to our LinkedIn page, supply any other questions, we will get back to you with those. We're also about building a community. So if you want to have peer-to-peer collaboration, put them in our LinkedIn event section, and you can collaborate and communicate with your peers on these topics. As I said, we have a session coming up on November 3rd, as you can see on your screen, around the compliance and regulatory issues of the FTC Safeguard. It'll also give you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Nodeware and, in general, some things going on in the continuous monitoring space. We have an open demo coming up again in November, as I said, with the Carbon Helix folks. That'll talk specifically about QRadar and how they use QRadar and the vulnerability management tool, Nodeware, integrated into that. So with that, I want to thank everybody for your time today. Thank you for your questions, both beforehand and during the chat. And we will be back to you next time. If you have any questions or you want to set up a proof of concept or a trial, you can reach us at the info@ website below, our email address below, and we'd be happy to have one of our folks get in touch with you. So with that, have a great day and have a great weekend coming up, and we will talk to you shortly. Thanks so much for your time.